For 872 days, Leningrad was sealed shut. No food, no fuel, no heat, no way out. 3 million civilians trapped in a frozen war zone where daily bread rations fell to 125 grams, half of it sawdust. The longest siege in modern history became one of its deadliest, and yet the city never surrendered. How it survived is a story almost too extreme to believe. On September 8, 1941, German forces seized the town of Schlisselburg on the Neva River, closing the final land corridor to the outside world. The ring was complete. Within hours, a massive industrial metropolis became a giant prison. To the north stood the Finnish army, to the south and west the German Army Group North. This encirclement immediately severed municipal infrastructure, cutting off the main power lines, water mains, and central heating systems just as autumn began to fade. With all railways and highways blocked, the only remaining gap in the German line was a vast, treacherous stretch of water to the east. Lake Ladoga. This frigid lake stood as the sole possible corridor for supplies, but it remained exposed to relentless airstrikes. Overnight, Leningrad was isolated, forced to rely on a single water route to survive. In November 1941, the German blockade transformed military encirclement into a system of cold municipal arithmetic. The primary weapon of this siege became the civilian ration card. Within weeks of the cutoff, the daily bread allowance for the majority of the population fell to just 125 grams. This tiny portion, about the size of a standard bar of soap, was only partially made of rye flour. To stretch the rapidly dwindling stockpiles, municipal bakeries mixed in 50 to 60% sawdust, industrial cellulose, and other inedible agricultural additives. This dense, bitter bread yielded roughly 300 calories of daily energy. By comparison, a healthy adult requires between 2,000 and 2,500 calories a day simply to perform basic activities. The resulting energy deficit was a deliberate, engineered calculation of human decay. Across the city, ordinary residents stood in silent, orderly queues, holding paper slips that measured the microscopic line between survival and extinction. By December 1941, the worst winter in decades struck Leningrad, sending temperatures plummeting to minus 40 degrees Celsius. As this extreme cold took hold, the municipal power grid failed completely. Without electricity, the water pumps fell silent and main water pipes cracked beneath the frozen ground. To survive, residents dragged wooden sleds to the banks of the Neva River, carving holes through thick ice to scoop up freezing water in buckets. The city's tram network lay completely paralyzed under heavy snowdrifts, halting all public transport. Walking became the only option for movement. Starving citizens, already physically weakened, walked miles through howling blizzards to claim their single, daily slice of bread. Inside dark, unheated apartments, families huddled around makeshift sheet metal stoves. To keep these fires burning against the brutal freeze, they stripped floorboards and fed their book collections, wood furniture, and family heirlooms into the flames. Every ordinary, daily task became an agonizing struggle for survival, transforming the historic city into a silent, frozen wasteland where staying alive required monumental effort. As the starvation deepened, the physical reality of the famine reshaped the people of Leningrad. Malnutrition stripped away body fat and muscle, altering voices and posture until men and women became virtually indistinguishable in the frozen gloom. Soon, hunger drove residents to consume anything organic. The city's zoo animals vanished first, followed by family dogs and cats. When those sources were exhausted, survival depended on industrial scraps. People boiled leather boots and belts to extract grease, scraped wallpaper paste from walls for its starch, and melted down carpenter's glue into a thick, bitter jelly. This extreme deprivation eventually pushed some past the limits of human morality. The Soviet state security apparatus, monitoring the population's collapse, began documenting the ultimate transgression. Records from the NKVD reveal that approximately 1,500 residents were arrested and prosecuted for cannibalism. In a city stripped of its infrastructure and food, these documented cases stood as a quiet, terrible measure of what happens when the instinct to survive collides with the absolute end of human endurance. On November 19, 1941, Leningrad Front Order Number 00172 authorized a desperate logistical gamble across Lake Ladoga. As temperatures plummeted, the water froze, creating a precarious bridge of ice. To support a single line of trucks, engineers required a minimum ice thickness of 20 centimeters, and 30 centimeters allowed for two-way traffic. This frozen expanse became the road of life. Under cover of darkness, drivers steered blacked-out truck convoys across the shifting, cracking surface. They drove with their cabin doors held open, ready to jump clear the instant the ice gave way beneath their wheels. German artillery and Messerschmitt fighter planes constantly shelled and strafed the exposed ice, leaving craters that frozen mist quickly concealed. Despite the constant bombardment, drivers like Maxim Tverdokleb guided their cargo vehicles through the pitch-black sub-zero freeze. These convoys carried tons of flour, meat, and fuel into the dying city. On their return journeys, the trucks packed the weakest survivors into their unheated beds, hauling over 500,000 starving civilians to safety. January 1942 became the deadliest month of the entire blockade. During these 31 days, the daily death toll in Leningrad climbed to between 3,500 and 4,000 people. In total, approximately 100,000 citizens perished in a single month. The sheer volume of casualties overwhelmed municipal services. Survivors, crippled by starvation and sub-zero temperatures, lacked the physical strength to dig graves in the frozen earth. Consequently, bodies wrapped in bedsheets or simple canvas shrouds were left on sidewalks, in alleyways, and in snowdrifts outside apartment blocks. Amid this massive wave of mortality, the collapse of entire families was recorded in the tiny notebook of a young girl named Tanya Savicheva. Using a pencil, she documented the dates and times of her family members' deaths. Under the letter Z, she recorded her sister, Genya. Under the letter B, her grandmother. Under the letter L, her brother, Lika. Her final entry, written in stark, shaky letters, read, "Everyone died. Only Tanya is left." Inside the stone walls of the Vavilov Institute of Plant Industry, a different kind of survival took place. Here lay the world's first global seed bank, containing over 200,000 varieties of irreplaceable crops. As the famine tightened its grip, a core group of botanists locked themselves inside to guard this living library. Though surrounded by tons of edible rice, wheat, and potatoes, they refused to touch a single grain. Instead, they chose to protect the future. At least 28 of these scientists quietly starved to death at their desks, preserving the collection for generations they would never see. On August 9, 1942, the starved survivors of the Leningrad Radio Orchestra gathered in the Grand Philharmonia Hall. Karl Eliasberg conducted the premiere of Dmitri Shostakovich's Seventh Symphony. The brass players, weakened by famine, struggled to blow into their instruments, while others trembled from cold. To ensure the performance was heard, Soviet military commanders set up massive loudspeakers along the front lines, broadcasting the music directly into the German trenches. This broadcast served as an act of defiance under siege, declaring to the German army that the city they intended to starve to death still possessed a voice. On January 27, 1944, the siege of Leningrad was finally lifted. The blockade had lasted 872 days, yet the city never surrendered. Of the 3.5 million people who once lived there, only about 600,000 remained alive in the ruins. Historians estimate that total deaths ranged from 1 million to 1.5 million. This loss in Leningrad alone exceeded the combined World War II deaths of both the United States and the United Kingdom. Leningrad survived, leaving behind a silent, devastated wasteland that had withstood the absolute limits of human endurance. Today, St. Petersburg's quiet streets carry an unspoken truth. The capacity to endure remains our ultimate shield. Leningrad proved that even in the deepest dark, the human spirit refuses to capitulate. How does this legacy of survival speak to you today? Join the conversation below.